My stepsister took away my fiancé and kept reminding me about it by sending postcards. But now they're both out of money and asking me for a job at our family's business, which was supposed to be hers. When I was 28, I was engaged to my college boyfriend Greg, who was also 28. We had been together since college and got engaged when we were 23. However, a week before our wedding, Greg ran away with my stepsister Melissa, who was also 28. They left a letter explaining that they had been having an affair for a few months and believed they were truly in love, leaving me behind. Greg's parents paid for the wedding, feeling ashamed of his actions. Since then, I'd had little contact with my family, who were furious. My stepdad even considered hiring a detective to find Greg and Melissa. My stepdad has been like a father to me since I was very young. He's the only dad I've ever known because my biological father left our family shortly after I was born. My mom never saw him again since he gave up his rights, and they were never married. My mom married my stepdad when I was 8, Melissa my stepsister, and I went to the same school, which is how our parents met. However, Melissa didn't like me for some reason and treated me poorly for years. She was a true bully, picking on me at school and even at home. I told my parents and they tried to stop her, but it didn't work. School was a nightmare because of her and her friends. Just like my dad, Melissa's mom wasn't around either, as she had passed away a few years prior. When Melissa was born, her mother had passed away due to an epileptic episode. Whenever my mom tried to discipline her, Melissa would argue that my mom wasn't her real mom, so she couldn't tell her what to do. My dad attempted to intervene and stop her bullying, but nothing worked because Melissa wasn't afraid of anything. They tried everything from scolding to reasoning with her, but she wouldn't stop tormenting me. Sometimes they threatened to send her away, but she knew they were empty threats. In middle school, she became even worse. By high school, she had developed bad habits and was practically a troublemaker. She smoked, sneaked out to drink with her troublesome friends, and even got arrested for breaking into a house while drunk. Finally, our parents decided to send her to a rehabilitation center for troubled teens after she was caught. Despite her protests, my dad insisted that she needed help and couldn't continue troubling everyone if she wanted to be part of the family. Since Melissa was causing trouble, she left during our sophomore year and didn't return until after we graduated. She attended a school near the rehab center and stayed with her aunt. I didn't see her much during those years because I wasn't interested in keeping up with my biggest bully. My parents visited her every weekend, but I always declined to join. Her friends started ignoring me after she left, which made high school much better for me. When Melissa returned, she apologized for everything she had done to me. She seemed calmer, and I believed she had changed for the better, so I forgave her. We were both about to start college soon, so it didn't matter much. After we moved out for college, we only came back for holidays. Melissa was nicer to me, meaning she ignored me instead of picking on me like before. Honestly, I preferred being ignored to being bullied. Our parents noticed the change but didn't push us to act like sisters, considering our history. Then I started dating Greg, and after being together for a year, I brought him home for Thanksgiving to introduce him to my parents. Everyone got along well, and even Melissa seemed interested in the conversation, which was unusual. Since her return from rehab, she and Greg had been getting along, and she started showing more interest in being friends with me after I started dating him. I was a bit paranoid and suspected she might have feelings for Greg, so I asked her about it one day. She laughed and explained that Greg had talked about his great relationship with his siblings during our first dinner together, which made her rethink her behavior towards me. She admitted that she had blamed me for her troubles for a long time but realized it wasn't my fault. She decided to make amends and improve our relationship, not because of Greg directly, but because he made her reconsider things. She acknowledged her past behavior and apologized sincerely, expressing her desire to truly become part of the family. Her words touched me deeply, and despite my reservations, I forgave her and decided to be friends. It hurt me when she later betrayed that friendship. We were on good terms for a long time, and she was actively involved in the wedding preparations. It was clear that Melissa was intentionally taunting me, especially when she mentioned being sorry about the surprise before my wedding, which was obviously insincere and meant to provoke me. This made me realize that she never truly forgave me for past events and still blamed me for her own troubles. She had never genuinely wanted to be my friend. She merely used me to get to Greg, and I had unknowingly allowed her to manipulate me. Her actions caused me immense distress, and I struggled to cope with the trauma for days, eventually seeking therapy for months to address my trust issues. The postcard wasn't an isolated incident. She continued to send me more postcards featuring her and Greg for months afterward, only stopping after about a year when I refused to engage with her antics. Our parents were deeply disappointed and severed all ties with her, which was a significant loss for Melissa as she was supposed to inherit her father's business. However, our father decided to offer me the opportunity to join him in the business instead, despite my history major being unrelated to business. He was willing to teach me everything I needed to know to eventually take over, seeing it as a way to make amends for what had happened. So I agreed and began working under my father to learn the ins and outs of running the business. The goal was for him to retire and pass the reins to me eventually. I put in a lot of effort over the next couple of years, and finally last year I was promoted and my father retired. It was a fantastic feeling to have started from scratch and now smoothly manage everything. Thanks to me, my parents can now enjoy more time together without worrying about the business. It's been like this for a while, and I stopped dwelling on Greg after I started working with my father. My focus shifted entirely to my work, aided by therapy, helping me move on. I can confidently say I've put them behind me and rarely think about what happened. I never imagined they would reach out to me again, let alone ask for my help. It would take a lot of audacity and a serious lack of judgment to seek my assistance after how they treated me. But I guess Melissa and Greg lack common sense because they did reach out to me a few days ago. I was at home on the weekend when I heard urgent knocking on my door. Assuming it was the pizza delivery, I opened the door to find Melissa standing there, looking visibly distressed. I was speechless, waiting for her to explain why she was there, but I could tell she needed help. Melissa appeared destitute, a stark contrast to her usual well-dressed self from childhood. She wore old, faded clothes, her jeans too short, and she looked undernourished. Despite her appearance, I had already decided that my answer would be a firm no to whatever she was about to ask. She explained that she and Greg had been struggling since he lost his job a few months ago. Instead of seeking new employment, he turned to drinking. Although Melissa had been attempting to find work herself, quitting everything to manage household tasks when they moved away with Greg left a significant gap in her resume, weakening her job prospects. She had heard that our father had retired and passed the business to me, hence her plea for me to hire Greg. Melissa apologized for her past actions and relied on my kindness to bail her out. She hadn't even approached our parents yet, coming directly to me out of guilt for betraying me before. Her audacity struck me, and I couldn't help but laugh at her entitlement. I bluntly refused, stating that I don't employ cheaters, before closing the door and considering calling the authorities. If she didn't leave my property soon, which thankfully she did that day, but she hasn't left me alone yet. After her visit, I immediately called our parents to inform them. They mentioned hearing from a couple of neighbors that Melissa was back in town without Greg. Living in a relatively small town meant news traveled fast. We discovered Melissa had been here for about a week before visiting me, staying with one of her high school friends. Likely, this friend informed her of my whereabouts and about the inheritance of the business, which she felt entitled to. A few days after visiting me, Melissa decided to confront our parents, expecting them to support her. However, to her surprise, my father made it clear that the business was now mine to manage as I saw fit, and my mother reminded her of her past betrayal. Melissa threw a tantrum, accusing our parents of favoritism towards me, claiming she had lost everything she was entitled to, including the business. She argued that Greg falling for her wasn't her fault, and the postcards she sent were meant to be genuine apologies, not torment. This conversation left me contemplating. While it's true the business was rightfully hers, her actions led to its loss. I never urged my father to cut ties with her. Her accusation of me being the favored child wasn't accurate, but I understood her perspective. Despite my mixed feelings, I couldn't bring myself to hire or financially assist them. It was enough that I empathized with her situation, considering all she had put me through. I struggled with the guilt of having what was once hers, feeling like I was getting back at her. Seeking clarity, I turned to my parents, who reassured me that I had no reason to feel sorry for Melissa. They had done everything to support her, but she refused to change. My father expressed his original intention to pass on the business to her had she behaved differently, but her actions spoke otherwise. This conversation brought me some peace, as talking to my parents often does. About a week had passed since Melissa's visit, and we hadn't heard from her until today when she unexpectedly showed up at my workplace, causing a scene. She accused me of stealing the business and pretending to be the perfect daughter. It was a distressing situation, as she easily gained access to the premises due to her familiarity with the place since childhood. She proceeded to make false accusations in front of my office, tarnishing my reputation. So they would approve of me, and apparently I was responsible for vilifying her by falsely accusing her of bullying me throughout our childhood, and even persuading my father to send her to rehab just to solidify my position as the golden child of the family. She went on to claim that this business was supposed to be hers, but I was refusing to let her be a part of it because I was jealous that Greg had chosen her over me. Unlike our parents, who she alleged always favored me, I wasn't accustomed to being overlooked, so I lost my composure and turned our parents against her. When I heard the yelling, I decided to go out and see for myself after calling security. I attempted to silence her, but she continued for a few minutes until she was eventually escorted out of the building. I then called my dad before involving the police, and he was furious, giving me the green